Princess Lyra of the Zithari Empire stood at the docking bay window, her four-fingered hands clasped tightly behind her back. The gleaming silver human ship grew larger against the backdrop of swirling purple gas clouds. She took a deep breath, willing her heart rates to slow. This was merely a diplomatic duty, she reminded herself. Nothing more. Nervous, daughter? Emperor Vexler asked, his tall figure appearing silently beside her. Of course not, father, Lyra replied, her voice carefully controlled. I simply wish to ensure everything proceeds according to protocol. The Emperor's mouth twitched slightly, the Zithari equivalent of a knowing smile. The human representative will be under your guidance for the next 30 days. Remember what we discussed, Lyra nodded. Humans are emotional, unpredictable, and technologically inferior, but they are also adaptable, resourceful, and potential allies. Good, Emperor Vexler said. And remember, while they lack our control, there is much we can learn from them. The ship docked with a gentle hiss of equalizing pressure. Lyra straightened her formal robes of state, shimmering fabric that reflected her royal status in wavelengths, both visible and invisible to most. Species. As the designated royal liaison, she needed to make the proper impression. The airlock cycled open. Lyra had studied human appearance extensively in preparation, but seeing one in person was different. Lieutenant Jack Miller walked through the doorway with a relaxed confidence that immediately set him apart from the stiff, formal movements of the Zithari Guard. He was tall for a human, with skin the color of the planet's sand dunes and short dark hair. His eyes, only two, unlike the Zithari's four, scanned the room quickly before settling on Lyra. When he smiled, showing blunt white teeth, Lyra felt an unexpected flutter in her secondary circulatory system. Princess Lyra, Jack said, bowing at precisely the correct angle for greeting royalty. Then, to everyone's surprise, he spoke in carefully pronounced Zithari. I bring greetings from Earth and the United Human Worlds. A murmur ran through the assembled court officials. Few visitors bothered to learn even basic Zithari phrases. Lieutenant Miller, Lyra replied in English, equally determined to show proper diplomatic respect. Welcome to Zithar Prime. We are honored by your presence. As they walked from the docking bay to the palace proper, Lyra noted how Jack moved. Where Zithari glided with measured steps, the human had a looser, more fluid way of walking. It seemed both careless and perfectly balanced at the same time. Your world is beautiful, Jack said, looking through the crystal corridors at the swirling gas giant their moon-sized world orbited. Those colors are amazing. The atmospheric patterns of Zithar Major are considered mathematically perfect, Lyra explained. The cycle repeats precisely every 7.3 years. Jack grinned. On Earth, we just say it's pretty. Lyra blinked her inner eyelids in confusion. But pretty is subjective. The mathematical harmony is objective fact. Sometimes the subjective matters too, Jack said with a shrug. This was not proceeding according to her careful plans. Lyra had prepared extensive informational tours about Zithari achievements, history, and technology. She had not prepared for simple observations about Beauty Dot at the formal welcome dinner that evening. Lyra watched the human from her place at the high table. Jack sat among mid-level diplomats, yet somehow became the center of attention. He asked questions, laughed often, and seemed genuinely interested in everyone around him. Most surprising was how the normally reserved Zithari responded to him, speaking more freely, their usual rigid postures relaxing slightly. The human adapts quickly, her father noted, following her gaze. Their emotional nature makes them skilled at forming social connections. A useful trait in diplomacy, Lyra acknowledged, if somewhat uncomfortable to observe. Later, as custom required, Lyra showed Jack to his quarters in the diplomatic wing. I hope you find everything satisfactory, she said formally. Your schedule for tomorrow has been uploaded to your data pad. Jack looked at the pad, scrolling through the minute-by-minute itinerary she had spent days perfecting. This is ... very detailed. Efficiency is valued in our culture, Lyra explained. Each activity has been timed to maximize your learning experience. Jack smiled again. He did that frequently, Lyra noticed. How about we compromise? I'll follow your schedule in the mornings, but afternoons can be more flexible. I'd like to see how regular people live, not just official sites. Lyra felt her facial membranes flush silver with surprise. No one altered royal schedules. It simply wasn't done. Yet she found herself considering his request. That would be highly irregular, she said finally. Good, Jack replied cheerfully. Irregular can be interesting. That night, alone in her private chambers, Lyra reviewed the humans file again. Lieutenant Jack Miller, age 28, decorated combat veteran now serving in diplomatic relations. His psychological profile noted high emotional intelligence alongside unusual adaptability to stress. The file included images of him in military uniform and diplomatic attire, but neither captured the living presence of the man. She closed the file and walked to her window. The gas giant filled half the sky, its swirling patterns indeed mathematically perfect. For the first time, she tried seeing it as pretty, rather than calculating its atmospheric equations. The feeling that resulted was strange and unsettling. The next morning, Lyra arrived at Jack's quarters precisely on time. When the door opened, she nearly stepped backward in shock. Instead of the formal diplomatic uniform she expected, Jack wore the standard-issue combat uniform of human military forces. Is there a problem? She asked, her voice sharper than intended. Not at all, Jack replied. But if we're touring defense installations today, I thought this would be more appropriate. Soldier to soldier. I am not a soldier, Lyra corrected automatically. Jack's eyes, a surprising shade of green, she noticed for the first time, seemed to see right through her practiced composure. Your file says you're trained in 3 forms of Zithari martial. Arts and tactical planning, he said. Sounds like a soldier to me, princess or not. Lyra felt that strange flutter again. No one on Zithar Prime would have dared to define her outside her royal role. Somehow, this human had seen past her title to something she rarely acknowledged herself. The defense installation tour will begin in 30 minutes, she said, refusing to engage with his observation. We should proceed to the transport bay. As they walked, Jack matching her pace easily, Lyra found herself unusually aware of his presence beside her. The careful emotional control that every Zithari spent years perfecting seemed suddenly more difficult to maintain. Something about this human warrior disrupted her balance in ways she couldn't yet understand, and the most disturbing part was that she wasn't entirely sure she wanted it to stop. 2 weeks passed on Zithar Prime. Princess Lyra found herself both frustrated and fascinated by Lieutenant Jack Miller. The human did not behave as expected. He followed protocol when necessary, but often suggested improvements to her carefully. Planned schedules. Even more disturbing was how often she agreed to his changes. Today they walked through the ancient crystal gardens, a sacred place where generations of Zithari royalty had come to meditate. Massive crystals grew from the ground, some reaching 50 feet tall. They glowed with inner light that shifted colors based on the emotions of those nearby. These are amazing, Jack said, looking up at a particularly large crystal. How do they work? The crystals respond to electromagnetic fields produced by brain activity, Lyra explained, slipping into the comfortable role of guide. Our scientists mapped the connection centuries ago. Jack reached out, almost touching a smaller crystal. It pulsed with warm orange light. So they show how you feel? Lyra felt her facial membranes flush silver. They respond to uncontrolled emotional states. Properly disciplined Zithari produced minimal reactions. She gestured to the crystals near her, which maintained a cool blue glow. Jack smiled that smile that always made her secondary heart beat faster. "So blue means you're feeling nothing?" he asked. "Blue indicates proper emotional discipline," she corrected. Jack walked slowly around a crystal cluster. As he moved, the colors shifted to warmer tones: oranges, golds, even flashes of red. "Your people value control, but your art is full of passion," he observed, gesturing to a particularly dynamic crystal formation. "There's a beautiful contradiction there." Lyra's membranes flushed silver again. "We channel our primitive impulses into appropriate venues." Jack raised an eyebrow. "On Earth, we don't see emotion as primitive. We see it as what makes life worth living." Before Lyra could respond, her communication device chimed. "We must return to the palace," she said after reading the message. "There is a diplomatic reception this evening I had forgotten." Jack looked surprised. "You forgot something?" "I thought Zithari never forgot anything." "We don't," Lyra said stiffly. The truth was disturbing. Her normal perfect recall had been less reliable lately. She found herself thinking about Jack when she should be focusing on duties. This was exactly why emotional control was so important. The reception was held in the Grand Hall. Representatives from 12 different worlds mingled with Zithari nobles. Lyra stood beside her father on the raised platform, watching Jack navigate the crowd below. He spoke with delegates from worlds even she found difficult, somehow making them laugh or nod in agreement. "Your human continues to impress, Emperor," Vexler noted. "The Krell ambassador has not spoken directly to anyone outside his species in 30 years, yet he engages freely with Lieutenant Miller." "He is not my human," Lyra said quickly. "And his methods are unorthodox, yet effective," her father replied. "Perhaps there is wisdom in—" A loud crash interrupted him as the main doors burst open. 6 figures rushed in, wearing the black uniforms of the Pure Zith movement, radicals who opposed all contact with other species. They carried energy weapons normally used only by palace guards. "Death to alien sympathizers." The leader shouted, aiming directly at the Emperor. Time seemed to slow. The palace guards were moving, but they were too far away. Lyra reached for her ceremonial dagger, knowing it would be useless against energy weapons. Her father stood frozen beside her. Then a blur of motion caught her eye. Jack was moving not away from danger, but toward it. He grabbed a decorative metal tray from a serving table and threw it like a disc. It hit the leader's weapon just as it fired, sending the energy blast into the ceiling. In the next moment, Jack had closed the distance and was among the attackers. What followed shocked everyone in the hall. The human moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible. He didn't fight like Zithari martial artists with their precise, calculated movements. Instead, he seemed to react instantly, as if his body decided before his mind could think. He disarmed. One attacker used that weapon to disable another, then took down the remaining 4 with a series of strikes too fast to follow in less than 30 seconds. All 6 attackers were unconscious on the floor. Jack stood in the middle, breathing hard, but apparently unhurt. The hall remained silent until the palace guards finally arrived. As they took the attackers away, whispers spread through the crowd. Lyra realized she had moved to the edge of the platform without consciously deciding to do so. When Jack looked up and their eyes met, she felt both her hearts beating rapidly. The crystal ornaments decorating the hall had all turned bright red. Later that night, Commander Vrex, the palace security chief, questioned Jack in a small meeting room. Lyra attended as royal representative. "Your file indicates diplomatic training," Vrex said, his 4 eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Yet you fought with elite combat skills. Explain." Jack shrugged. "I'm a soldier first, The diplomatic role came later. Your reflexes exceed standard human parameters, Rex pressed. I was Special Forces, Jack said simply. We're trained too. React without thinking. Without thinking? Lyra asked, unable to hide her surprise. On Zithar, all action came from careful thought. Jack looked at her. In combat, thinking takes too long. You train until your body knows what to do. Then you trust your instincts. Instincts, Rex repeated the word with clear disapproval. Primitive reactions. Those primitive reactions saved your Emperor, Jack pointed out. After Rex left, Lyra. And Jack remained in the room. She found herself studying him with new eyes. You could have been killed, she said finally. Yes, yet you didn't hesitate. Jack's expression grew serious. Some things are worth risking your life for. You don't even know my father, Lyra said, genuinely confused. I saw a threat and acted. That's what warriors do. Something about the simple way he said it made Lyra feel strange. Zithari valued careful planning and risk assessment. The idea of acting purely on instinct was foreign, and yet she couldn't deny the results. That night, Lyra did something she had never done before. She accessed the security recordings and watched Jack's actions during the attack again and again. The fluid grace of his movements, the split-second decisions made without hesitation. It was everything Zithari were taught to avoid, yet she couldn't stop watching. The next morning, Jack found her in the palace gardens. She had been avoiding him, needing time to process her confusing thoughts. Your father wants me to train some of your guards, he said without preamble. He thinks they could learn from human fighting techniques. Lyra looked up, surprised. That's unprecedented. Jack sat beside her on the stone bench. He said you recommended it. She had done no such thing, which meant her father had observed her interest in the human's methods. How embarrassing. My father sees value in different perspectives, she said carefully. Jack was quiet for a moment. You've been avoiding me since the attack. I have been occupied with important matters, Lyra lied. You're not very good at lying, Jack said, but his tone was gentle. Your facial membranes turned silver. Did you know that? Lyra felt them doing. Exactly that in response to his words. No one had ever pointed out her involuntary reactions before. Zithari politely ignored such lapses in control. Why does emotional response disturb you so much? Jack asked. Lyra stood up, needing distance. Emotions cloud judgment. They lead to poor decisions. They also save lives, Jack said quietly. If I had stopped to calculate odds yesterday, your father would be dead. For once, Princess Lyra of the Zithari had no logical response. A month passed since Jack arrived on Zithar Prime. Princess Lyra found her normal routines disrupted in ways she never expected. Jack now trained with the Royal Guards 3 mornings each week. The palace staff greeted him by name. Even her. Father sought Jack's opinions on security matters. Most disturbing was how Lyra herself had changed. She found herself looking forward to their daily meetings. She caught herself wondering what Jack would think about various aspects of Zithari culture. Worst of all, she noticed her emotional control slipping more frequently when he was near. Today, they walked through the lower levels of the palace, areas not usually shown to visitors. Jack had asked about the power systems that kept the massive structure running, and Lyra decided a direct tour would be more efficient than a technical explanation. This is our central power distribution hub, she explained as they entered a vast chamber filled with humming equipment. It channels energy from our orbital collectors to every system in the palace. Jack looked around with genuine interest. It's huge, much bigger than anything we have on Earth. Zithari engineering is considerably advanced compared to human technology, Lyra said, unable to keep a note of pride from her voice. Jack smiled. I won't argue with that. But sometimes simpler systems are more reliable. Before Lyra could defend Zithari engineering, a sharp alarm sounded. Red lights began flashing throughout the chamber. Around them, technical staff moved with sudden urgency. "What's happening?" Jack asked. Lyra checked the nearest information panel, her 4 eyes scanning the data quickly. "There's a problem with the quantum stabilization system. It's showing signs of cascade failure." Chief Engineer Zalrix rushed into the room, surrounded by his technical team. He stopped short when he saw Lyra. "Your Highness, you should evacuate." "Immediately," he said, bowing quickly. "We have a serious situation." "Explain," Lyra demanded. "The quantum stabilizers are failing. If they collapse completely, the resulting energy release could destroy half the capital city." Jack stepped forward. "How long until critical failure?" Zolrix blinked in surprise at being addressed by the human. "Approximately 3 hours at current. Degradation rates. We've initiated emergency protocols." Lyra watched as the technical team began a series of complex diagnostic procedures. Each step was carefully performed according to standard emergency protocols. Each step took precious time. "What exactly needs to be done to fix it?" Jack asked. "The system requires manual reset at the core," Zolrix explained. "But first, we must complete full diagnostics to determine optimal reset parameters." Jack frowned. "How long will diagnostics take?" "Approximately 2 hours," Zolrix replied. "That doesn't leave much margin for error," Jack observed. Lyra could see Jack's growing frustration as the Zithari team methodically worked through their procedures. When her father arrived with the emergency council, Jack immediately approached. "Them, Emperor Vexler," he said with a quick bow. "The current approach is too slow. The system needs to be manually reset now before completing all diagnostics." The council members looked shocked at his suggestion. Breaking protocol during an emergency was unthinkable. The reset parameters must be precisely calculated. Council Elder Mivix objected. Otherwise, the reset could accelerate the collapse. "Sometimes you have to act before you have perfect information," Jack insisted. "Each minute increases the risk of total failure." Emperor Vexler looked thoughtful. "What do you suggest, Lieutenant Miller?" "Send me to the core. I can perform the manual reset while your team continues diagnostics. If they determine better parameters before I finish, they can update me." "Impossible," Zolrix stated flatly. "The core chamber is flooded with radiation from the destabilization. Even with protection, exposure would be fatal within minutes." "Fatal for Zithari," Jack said. "Humans have different radiation tolerances. I might be able to complete the reset before suffering permanent damage." Lyra felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. "Lieutenant Miller, you cannot mean to sacrifice yourself." Jack looked at her directly. "It's what I'm trained to do, Your Highness. Calculate risk and act. Your survival probability would be less than 40%, Zolrix said after checking his instruments. "I've faced worse odds," Jack replied with a small smile. Emperor Vexler studied the human carefully, then nodded. "Prepare a radiation suit for Lieutenant Miller. Chief Zolrix, brief him on the reset procedure immediately." Lyra couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Father, this is irrational. There must be another solution." "Time is against us, daughter," the Emperor said quietly. "And the human has volunteered." 20 minutes later, Jack stood at the entrance to the core access corridor, wearing a Zithari radiation suit that didn't quite fit his human frame. Zolrix had given him detailed instructions for the manual reset, which Jack had memorized with surprising speed. Lyra had followed him to the security checkpoint, breaking protocol in a way she never would have imagined a month ago. "This is unnecessary," she insisted, her voice betraying more emotion than she had ever allowed herself to show in public. "We should wait for the diagnostic results." "Sometimes waiting is more dangerous than acting," Jack said. He checked the seals on his suit one last time. It's a simple procedure. I'll be fine. Your survival probability is. Don't tell me the numbers, Jack interrupted. Sometimes you have to follow your gut, not the statistics. Your ... digestive system is making this decision? Lyra asked, genuinely confused. Jack laughed, the sound startlingly warm in the sterile corridor. It means sometimes you have to trust your instincts. Something I think you might be better at than you realize, Princess. Before she could respond, he reached out and briefly touched her arm, the first time he had initiated physical contact with her. See you soon. As Jack disappeared into the airlock, Lyra experienced a moment of clarity. The Zethari prided themselves on eliminating fear through logical analysis, but watching Jack walk knowingly into danger awakened in her a stark, primal terror she couldn't rationalize away. For the next 30 minutes, Lyra stood motionless at the monitoring station, watching Jack's life signs as he made his way to the core. His heart rate remained steady, while the radiation exposure indicator climbed steadily higher. Approaching the central chamber now, Jack's voice came through. The communication system slightly distorted. Beginning reset sequence. Lyra watched the screens as Jack worked through the complex sequence of adjustments. The suit sensors showed his body temperature rising dangerously as the radiation penetrated the inadequate protection. Radiation levels exceeding safe parameters for human physiology, the medical officer reported. He should evacuate immediately. Almost done. Jack's voice sounded strained now. Just need to confirm ... the sequence. The monitors showed the quantum stabilizers beginning to realign. The system was responding, but Jack's vital signs were deteriorating rapidly. Lieutenant Miller, Lyra said into the communication system, the stabilizers are responding. You must return now. There was no answer. Jack, she called, abandoning proper protocol entirely. You must return now. Just ... one more minute, came his faint reply. On the monitors, Lyra could see the stabilization levels improving steadily. But Jack had collapsed to his knees in the core chamber. Extraction team, prepare for immediate retrieval, Emperor Vexler ordered. Before the team could move, the main stabilizer indicators all turned green. The system had reset successfully. It's done, Jack's voice whispered through the speakers. Then the life sign monitors began flashing urgent warnings. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra acted without thinking. She grabbed a radiation suit from the emergency team and began putting it on. Daughter, what are you doing? Her father demanded. He saved us, Lyra said simply. Now I'm going to save him. Jack opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar. His body felt heavy, like it was made of stone. Where was he? What had happened? He's awake, a voice said nearby. Jack turned his head and saw Princess Lyra sitting beside his bed. She looked different. Her normally perfect posture was slightly slouched. Her formal robes were replaced by simpler clothing. Most surprising of all, she looked tired. Welcome back, Lieutenant Miller, she said. Her voice sounded strange, almost shaky. The stabilizers? Jack asked, his own voice rough and weak. Fully functional, Lyra replied. You successfully reset the system. The city is safe. Jack tried to sit up, but found he couldn't. How long? Have I been out? 3 days, Lyra said. The radiation exposure was severe. Our medical team was not certain you would survive. Jack noticed they were in the Royal Medical Wing. The room was filled with advanced equipment he didn't recognize. Some of it was connected to him through thin tubes. You should not have taken such a risk, Lyra continued. Her facial membranes had a silver tint that Jack now recognized as emotional distress. It worked out, he said with a weak smile. You nearly died. Jack tried to shrug, but it hurt too much. Part of the job. Lyra stood up suddenly. Your job is diplomatic exchange, not suicide missions. Jack was surprised by her outburst. In the month he had known her, Lyra had never raised her voice. I'm sorry I worried you, he said. Lyra seemed to catch herself. She took a deep breath and visibly regained her Zithari composure. The Emperor wishes to speak with you when you are recovered. I will inform him you are awake. She turned to leave, but Jack called after her. Lyra. She stopped. He had never used just her name before, always her title. Thank you for sitting with me, he said. She didn't turn around. I was merely fulfilling my duties as liaison. After she left, a Zithari doctor entered and examined Jack. The doctor explained that human biology was surprisingly resilient to radiation compared to Zithari physiology. Still, Jack had suffered significant damage that would take weeks to heal completely. You are fortunate to be alive, the doctor concluded. If Princess Lyra had not extracted you when she did, recovery would have been impossible. Jack frowned. What do you mean, extracted me? The doctor looked uncomfortable. I should not discuss this. Rest now. Over the next few days, Jack learned what had happened. After he collapsed in the core chamber, Lyra had put on a radiation suit and personally entered the chamber to drag him out. She had acted without permission, breaking numerous royal protocols. The radiation exposure she received was minor compared to his, but it had been a significant risk. Nonetheless, no one would tell him how the princess was being treated for her actions. Jack's requests to see her were politely declined. He was told she was occupied with duties. A week after waking up, Jack was finally strong enough to walk. He was sitting in a garden attached to the medical wing when Emperor Vexler appeared. Lieutenant Miller, the Emperor said, his voice formal but not unfriendly. It is good to see you recovering. Jack tried to stand, but the Emperor gestured for him to remain seated. Your actions saved many lives, Vexler continued. The Zithari Empire is in your debt. Thank you, Your Majesty, Jack replied. But I've heard rumors that Princess Lyra is facing consequences for helping me. That doesn't seem right. The Emperor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of surprise. You are concerned for her welfare? Of course, Jack said. She saved my life. Emperor Vexler sat on the bench beside Jack, an unexpectedly informal gesture from the ruler of 12 worlds. My daughter's behavior has caused concern, he said. After a moment, the High Council questions her objectivity regarding you. Jack frowned. Because she helped me? Because she acted from emotion rather than logic, the Emperor clarified. It is not our way. With all due respect, Your Majesty, sometimes emotion leads to the right action when logic would be too slow. The Emperor studied Jack with ancient, calculating eyes. That is precisely what Lyra argued before the council. Jack felt a surge of pride for the princess. And what did the council say? They are considering the matter. The Emperor's mouth twitched slightly. Their deliberations may take some time. Jack sensed there was more to the story. May I speak with Princess Lyra? She has requested solitude for meditation, the Emperor said. But perhaps an exception could be made. Later that day, Jack was escorted to a part of the palace he had never seen before. The guard left him at an ornate door. When Jack entered, he found a large room with windows overlooking the capital city. Princess Lyra stood by the window, her back to the door. She wore simple white robes instead of her usual formal attire. Your father said you want to be alone, Jack said. I can come back later, Lyra returned. For the first time since he had known her, she made no attempt to hide the silver flush of emotion on her face. I did not expect you to be walking so soon. She said, human resilience, Jack replied with a smile. Thank you for saving my life. Lyra looked away. My actions were impulsive and dangerous. They were brave, Jack corrected, and exactly what I would have done for you. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. The Council believes I have been compromised by my association with you. Have you? Jack asked softly. Lyra looked at him directly. I questioned our objectivity regarding humans before the Council. I told them we've dismissed your species as primitive because you embrace what we reject. But I've seen that there's strength in your approach that we lack. What did your father say to that? He said compassion, Lyra replied, her voice quieter now. He said we recognized its power in humans long ago. It's why they initiated this exchange program. Jack moved closer to her. You knew? I did not, Lyra said, looking genuinely surprised. My father explained that the Council has observed humans for centuries. Your emotional nature makes you unpredictable, yes, but also innovative, adaptive, and extraordinarily resilient. The Zithari have reached our pinnacle through logic and control, but we've begun to stagnate. The Council believes human qualities, properly integrated, may be our future. Jack wasn't sure what to say. He had been sent as a simple diplomatic representative, not as the key to the future of an advanced alien civilization. So what happens now? He asked. The Council wishes to expand the exchange program, Lyra said. They want to send Zithari representatives to Earth and bring more humans here. They believe our species can learn from each other. For the first time in days, Jack felt truly hopeful. He reached out and took Lyra's hand. Her skin was cooler than human temperature and smoother, but her fingers curled around his in a very human gesture. I think they're right, he said. Lyra looked down at their joined hands, then back at Jack's face. The silver flush on her face deepened. When I saw you collapse in the core chamber, she said slowly, I experienced fear unlike anything I had known before. I acted without thinking, without calculating risks. I simply knew I could not let you die. That's how humans make a lot of our decisions, Jack said. Especially the important ones. It was most unsettling, Lyra admitted, but also clarifying. Jack smiled. That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say. For the first time. Since he had known her, Princess Lyra of the Zithara allowed herself to smile freely in return. 6 months passed since the quantum stabilizer crisis. Life on Zithar Prime had changed in ways no one expected. Lieutenant Jack Miller's scheduled 1-month stay had been extended indefinitely. The human Zithari exchange program had expanded rapidly, with 20 more humans arriving and 15 Zithari traveling to Earth. Jack's recovery from radiation exposure had been slow but steady. His human body had healed better than the Zithari doctors predicted. In the months since, he had become something of a hero among the Zithari people. The story of his sacrifice to save the capital city had spread quickly. Princess Lyra had changed too. She still maintained proper royal dignity in public, but those close to her noticed differences. She smiled more often. She sometimes made decisions without calculating every possible outcome. Most shocking of all, she had begun training in human style. Combat techniques alongside Jack today was important. Jack's official role as Earth's representative was ending. He would return home tomorrow, unless new arrangements were made. The throne room was filled with officials from both worlds for the final audience. Jack entered wearing a formal Earth diplomatic uniform. He walked to the center of the room and bowed to Emperor Vexler, who sat on the ancient crystal throne. Lieutenant Jack Miller, the Emperor's voice filled the large chamber. You came to Zithar Prime as a representative of Earth. You have served as a bridge between our worlds with distinction. Jack remained silent, waiting. Princess Lyra stood beside her father's throne. Her face was carefully composed, but Jack could see the silver tint around her facial membranes that betrayed her emotions. The Council has reached a decision, the Emperor continued. We wish to establish a permanent Human Zithari Cultural Integration Academy. This academy will train representatives from both our worlds to better understand each other's strengths. Murmurs spread through the crowd. This was unprecedented. Furthermore, the Emperor said, we wish for you, Lieutenant Miller, to return to Zethar Prime as the first director of this academy. Jack looked surprised and thoughtful. It would be my honor, Your Majesty, but I have conditions. A ripple of shock ran through the assembled nobles. No one set conditions for the Emperor. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Emperor Vexler tilted his head. Speak them. The academy must be truly integrated, Jack said clearly. Equal numbers of humans and Zithari, with shared leadership. And ... He hesitated, then continued, I request that Princess Lyra serve as co-director. Now the shock was palpable. A royal princess, assigned to work alongside a human as equals? Unprecedented. All eyes turned to Lyra, who stood tall beside her father's throne. 6 months ago, she would have been horrified at the suggestion. Now, she felt only certainty. I accept, she said clearly, before her father could respond. Emperor Vexler studied his daughter for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed, a sound so rare that many of the younger nobles had never heard it. So be it, he declared. Let this mark the beginning of a new era for both our peoples. That evening, Jack and Lyra walked in the Crystal Gardens, where they had first begun to understand each other. The massive crystals glowed with warm colors as they passed, oranges, golds, even flashes of red. No longer did Lyra try to maintain the cool blue of emotional control. Your father surprised me, Jack said. I expected more resistance to the idea of us working together. My father sees farther than most, Lyra replied. He understands that Zithari need what humans have to offer. And what's that? Jack asked, with a smile. Instinct, courage, compassion. Lyra stopped walking and turned to face him. The willingness to act without calculating every outcome. Jack looked at her with warmth in his eyes. And what do humans need from the Zithari? Precision, patience, the ability to see patterns across centuries rather than moments. Lyra's voice grew softer. Balance. They had reached the center of the garden, where the largest crystal formation rose like a frozen waterfall. In the months since Jack's arrival, this crystal had changed. Once a uniform blue like all the others, it now pulsed with a blend of colors, blue mixing with warm, human reds and golds. The academy will change both our worlds, Jack said, looking up at the crystal. There will be challenges, many, Lyra agreed. The pure Zith movement already protests the expanded exchange program. Some humans on Earth fear alien influence. Neither side fully understands what we're trying to build. And what are we building? Princess? Jack asked quietly. Lyra was silent for a moment. During the months of Jack's recovery, they had grown closer than either had expected. They had shared stories, taught each other skills, and gradually broken down the barriers between their different worlds. A future, she said finally. One where both our peoples are stronger together than apart. Jack nodded. In 2 days, he would return briefly to Earth to submit his formal acceptance of the new position and arrange his affairs. Then he would come back to Zethar Prime, not as a visitor, but to stay. There's something I've wanted to ask you, Jack said. Something personal. Lyra's facial membranes flushed silver. Yes? That day in the core chamber, when I was resetting the stabilizers. Why did you come for me yourself? You could have sent the rescue team. Lyra looked down at her 4-fingered hands, then back up at Jack's face. 6 months ago, she would have given a logical explanation. She would have spoken of diplomatic responsibility or the importance of the exchange program. I could not bear the thought of losing you, she said simply. All my life, I was taught that emotions are primitive, dangerous things to be controlled. But in that moment, I understood something different. What? Jack asked softly. That some emotions don't need to be controlled. They need to be followed. Lyra took a step closer to him. The Zithari live for centuries, Jack. We plan for the thaw. Long-term in everything we do. But you humans taught me that some moments matter more than years of careful planning. Jack smiled. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about humans. Around them, the crystals pulsed with warm light. Jack reached out slowly and took Lyra's hand as he had done once before. This time, she moved closer until they stood face to face. Your people still think I'm too emotional, Jack said. And your people would find me cold, Lyra replied. I don't, Jack said simply. Princess Lyra, once the perfect example of Zithari composure, felt her heart's race in a most unprincess-like manner. And for once, she didn't try to control it at all. We have much to learn from each other, she said as the twin moons of Zithar Prime rose above the crystal garden. The human warrior and the alien princess stood together in the warm glow of the ancient crystals, their different worlds beginning to merge into something new and unexpected. And neither of them was struggling to keep cool anymore.